In this module, we shall discuss about monopsony, bilateral monopoly and workable competition. Monopsony is a market structure where there is a single buyer of the product of the market. This market power enables the buyer to purchase the good at less than the price that is prevailing in the competitive market. After starting this module, you shall be able to know the concept of monopsony and bilateral monopoly, understand the concept of workable competition and its relevance for economy as a whole, distinguish between single seller and single buyer market structure, understand how equilibrium takes place when a single buyer meets the single seller, understand the factors affecting the buyer side of the market, understand the difference between two distinctly terms used in economics, that is monopoly and monopsony. Let us now discuss monopsony in detail. Monopsony is a market structure which was first introduced by John Robinson in 1933 in her book The Economics of Imperfect Competition. She was awarded as Classic Scholar Bertrand Hallward at University of Cambridge for this contribution. Monopsony is a market structure where there is a single buyer and many competing sellers. This market power enables the buyer to purchase the good at less than the price that is prevailing in the competitive market. In order to find equilibrium under monopsony market structure, we need to introduce two terms, that is average expenditure and marginal expenditure. The monopsony is an equilibrium where marginal value is equal to marginal expenditure. In order to understand average expenditure and marginal expenditure concept, we are using the concept of competitive buyer. In the market structure, we have seen that in order to decide how much of a good to purchase, we use the marginal principal rule. Under marginal principal rule, marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, that is additional benefits equal additional cost, and demand curve measures the marginal value as a function of quantity purchased. In competitive market, each buyer is so small in terms of a market as a whole that it cannot influence the market. Each individual buyer has no influence on the price of the product, and each buyer can purchase whatever amount he wants to buy at the industry determined price. The cost of each unit buyer purchase is equal to the price of the product. The price per unit paid by the buyer is known as average expenditure. The average expenditure remains same for all units as the price per unit paid by the buyer is same. On the other hand, marginal expenditure is the addition to total expenditure attributable to purchase of one more unit of good. In competitive market, average expenditure is equal to marginal expenditure. They both are straight line parallel to horizontal axis, but the same is not true for monopolist. Under monopsony, the price that a monopsonist pays for each quantity purchased is given by the market supply curve of the inputs. The supply curve for most inputs are positively sloped, that is upward sloping. The positively sloped supply curve indicates a positive relationship between price and quantity purchased. The curve shows how much price per unit buyers are paying for the good, which is a function of the number of units buyers purchase. So, the supply curve is the average expenditure curve. The average expenditure curve, like market supply curve, is upward sloping. The marginal expenditure must lie below average expenditure curve because the decision to buy an extra unit raises the price that must be paid for all units and not just the extra one. We can obtain marginal expenditure algebraically. Supply curve shows the relationship between price and quantity supplied. So, P is a function of Q. Total expenditure is price multiplied by quantity, that is E into PXQ. Marginal expenditure is addition to total expenditure attributable to purchase of one more unit of good, that is ME is equal to delta T into E upon delta Q is equal to P into Q plus Q into delta P upon delta Q. We know that supply curve is positively sloped. So, delta P upon delta Q is positive. So, marginal expenditure is greater than average expenditure, ME is greater than AE. The monopsonist is an equilibrium where marginal revenue is equal to marginal expenditure. Let us understand it graphically. Quantity is measured on x-axis and price is measured on y-axis. AE is the average expenditure curve, ME is the marginal expenditure curve, and MV is the demand curve which shows the marginal valuation. The equilibrium would occur at point E where marginal value curve intersects the marginal expenditure curve. The equilibrium price is OP star and equilibrium quantity is OQ star. The monopsonist is buying the optimal quantity OQ star at price OP star. The quantity and price that is prevailing in monopsony market is lower than price and output that will prevail in competitive market. Moving on to the discussion of bilateral monopoly. Bilateral monopoly is a market structure where the participants are two monopolies, that is one on the demand side and one on the supply side. It arises when a monopolist single seller faces a monopsonist single buyer. Here, both buyers are sellers and are in a bargaining position, so it is very difficult to predict what the price and output will be. Here, we are assuming that firms are organized in such a way that it acts like a monopsony and labor is organized in a labor union that acts like a monopolist. We know that there is no supply curve for monopoly. It implies that there is no unique relationship between price and quantity supplied. A monopolist is maximizing its profit by selecting a point on his buyer's demand function. On the other hand, there is no input demand function for monopolist. A monopsonist is maximizing its profit by selecting a point on his seller's supply function. In bilateral monopoly, monopsony power and monopoly power counteract each other. The monopoly power of sellers will reduce the effective monopsony power of buyers and vice versa. The monopolist cannot exploit a demand function that does not exist, and the monopsonist cannot exploit the input demand function that does not exist. The three possible solutions under bilateral monopoly are: first, the monopsonist and monopolist may cooperate with each other and achieve a Nash equilibrium solution. Second, monopolist may dominate and force the monopsonist to accept his price and output decisions or vice versa. Third, the market mechanism may break down such that no trade takes place at all. Let us understand the case of bilateral monopoly with the help of a diagram. In the figure, output is measured on horizontal axis and price and cost are measured on the vertical axis. DDB is the demand curve faced, but the monopsonist, that is single buyer, which is based upon his marginal utility curve. As there exists a single buyer of the product in the market, his demand curve DDB would be the average revenue curve of the monopolist. Thus, we donate DDB curve as the ARs, that is the average revenue of the seller. MR is the marginal revenue curve faced by the monopolist corresponding to the demand curve DDB. The supply curve of labor faced by the monopsonist is upward sloping. It is shown by curve SL. This supply curve is nothing but the average expenditure curve faced by the monopsonist. The corresponding marginal expenditure curve is MEB and it would lie above AEB because average expenditure rises as he obtains more quantity of the product. Suppose in the first case, monopsonist assumes that he has full market power to set the price and output. So, as to maximize profit, he will equate marginal expenditure to the marginal value indicated by the demand curve DDB. The monopsonist equilibrium will occur at point E1 where the marginal expenditure curve MEB intersects the demand curve DDB. The monopsonist equilibrium price is OW1 and equilibrium quantity is OL1. The monopsonist is maximizing his profit by optimally purchasing OL1 at OW1 price. On the other hand, suppose the monopolist assumes that he has full market power to set the price and output so as to maximize profit. In order to maximize profit, the monopolist would equate marginal revenue with marginal cost. The monopolist is in equilibrium at point E2 where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. The monopolist equilibrium price is OW2 and equilibrium quantity is OL2. The quantity OL2 at OW2 price. The monopolist is purchasing the most profitable quantity OL2 at OW2 price. We can see from the figure that the price which the monopolist want to set is higher than the price which monopolist wants to set, that is OW2 OW1. It is clear that when both monopolist and monopsonist assumes to be the sole price maker and act autonomously, then the ultimate result is different prices as well as different quantities. The bilateral monopoly model gives only the upper limit and the lower limit within which the wage rate lies. The wage rate will then be determined by the bargaining. The outcome derived from bargaining is not known with certainty. The upper limit here would be OW2, that is the price that monopolist wish to set, and the lower limit would be OW1, that is the price that monopsonist wish to set. The price can end up anywhere between these two units, that is OW2 and OW1. So we can say that the solution to a bilateral monopoly is indeterminate. Next, we shall discuss about workable competition. There are four types of market structure that we have covered so far, namely perfect competition, monopoly, monopolistic and oligopoly, where perfect competition is one extreme and monopoly the other. There are other forms of market likes monopolist competition, duopoly, oligopoly, which lie between perfect competition and monopoly. These market structures are different from perfect competition and monopoly in terms of degree of competition and market power. Now, the question that arises here is which market structure to adopt to considering the viewpoints of a business firm and the whole economy. The objective of the business firm is to maximize its profit rather than the welfare. In order to have more profit, business firm prefer greater degree of market power. So, a business firm always prefer monopoly market structure. Let us now take the viewpoint of economy as a whole, which considers monopoly an inefficient form of market structure. The monopolist equilibrium is allocatively inefficient because it does not maximize the sum of producer surplus and consumer surplus. Monopoly, which maximizes its profit by producing an output where price is more than marginal cost, results in higher prices and lower quantities and makes the firm better off and consumer worse off. The consumer exploitation is maximum in case of monopoly. The next market structure which comes after monopoly in terms of market power is duopoly and oligopoly. Duopoly is a special case of oligopoly where two firms are competing with each other. Under oligopoly, each firm has enough market power to prevent itself from being a price taker. The duopoly and oligopoly have assured monopoly power to influence the market. Another market structure which may not be preferred either by firm or by the economy as a whole is monopolistic competition. Under monopolistic competition, the industry has excess capacity as each firm is not producing at the minimum point on its LAC curve. Here, firms are investing in capacity that is not fully utilized. Besides this, firms are incurring huge expenditures on selling cost. In long run, the firm would attain equilibrium when all the firms are earning zero economic profit. Free entry will drive down all the supernormal profits to zero. This is because of this inefficiencies, monopolistic competition is not preferred by society as a whole. The only market structure left is perfect competition, which is most desirable from the economy as a whole. Perfect competition is a market structure with large number of buyers and sellers trading homogeneous product so that each seller and buyer is a price taker and not a price maker. But the problem with perfect competitive market structure is that it is not observed in reality. Some of its assumptions such as absence of market restriction, homogeneous product, perfect information about the market, etc. are not met in practice. Under perfect competition, each seller is so small that by changing its price it cannot affect the market as a whole. In the long run, all firms are earning zero economic profit. Even in the short run, perfect competition operate in the business passively without any market power. Therefore, perfect competition is also an unreal situation. Thus, the instability, discontent and hypothetical nature of perfect competition led to a search for its alternative. The alternative should not deviate from the perfect competition but also provides a workable base for the economy. The workable base for the economy should target economic efficiency. The idea of workable competition was first enunciated by economist J.M. Clark in 1940. There is no exact definition of workable competition. Several authors have taken it in terms of fulfillment of certain conditions. According to Clark, competition is rivalry in selling goods, in which each selling unit normally seeks maximum net revenue. Under conditions such that the price or prices each seller can charge are effectively limited by the free options of the buyer to buy from a rival seller or sellers of what we think of as the same product, necessitating an effort by each seller to equal or exceed the attractiveness of the others offering to a sufficient number of sellers to accomplish the end in view. Clark, using this definition, makes the concept of workable competition explicit and given three conditions, which are: first, a demand curve must be steep enough to enable the entrepreneur to cover per unit cost. Second, active threats of possibility of intercommodity substitution and potential competition. In case of small numbers, sufficient non-homogeneous products to cause uncertainty about reactions of competitors. According to Stigler, an industry is workable competitive when there are a considerable number of firms selling closely related products in each market area. These firms are not in collusion and the long run average cost curve for a new firm is not materially higher than that for an established firm. According to Edward, large number of buyers and sellers, absence of collusion and coercion, free entry and the profit motives are necessary characteristics of workable competition. Bain has defined it as patterns of market structure and conduct which may be expected to give rise to or associated with workable performance. We have seen that workable competition is a normative concept tied up with the overall objectives in economy. which form of market structure is relevant for economy is a social policy issue. It is a regulatory mechanism to improve the links between market performance, market conduct and market structure in the most desirable way. Let us now summarize what we have learned in this module. We have seen that monopsony is a market structure which shows the buyer side of the market. This market power enables the buyer to purchase the good at less than the price that is prevailing in the competitive market. Bilateral monopoly, on the other hand, is a market structure where two monopolies interact each other. The equilibrium is indeterminate under bilateral monopoly. The bilateral monopoly model gives only the upper limit and the lower limit within which the wage rate lies. The upper limit here would be the price that monopolists wish to set and the lower limit would be the price that monopsonists wish to set. The price can end up anywhere between these two limits. The wage rate will then be determined by the bargaining. The outcome derived from bargaining is not known with certainty. So, we can say that the solution to a bilateral monopoly is indeterminate. We have seen that workable competition is a normative concept tied up with the overall objectives in economy. Which form of market structure is relevant for economy is a social policy issue. It is a regulatory mechanism to improve the links between market performance, market conduct and market structure in the most desirable way. It is a pattern of market structure and conduct which may be expected to give rise to or associated with workable performance.